Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Iflight Green Hornet. This is a cheaper version of the Iflight Bumblebee which I previously reviewed on the channel. And they are both 3-inch CineWhoops, more designed for commercial use, but they definitely have a following in the hobby as well. They can be flown indoors, although they are better suited for larger indoor spaces such as warehouses and shops, because despite having protectors, they weigh about the same as a 5-inch freestyle model, and of course they can be flown outdoors as well. So the Hornet is around $100 less than the Bumblebee, but they look and function very similar. For example, the frame appears to be the same, other than the 3D printed material being green. The anti-slip mat, battery strap, and VTX antenna is the same, as well as the receiver's housing and the antenna straws. You still have to buy the GoPro mount separately, and be careful with this because there are two different mounts. One for the Hero 8 and one for the Hero 7. I figured that people going for the cheaper model would more likely have a Hero 7 or lower, so that's the mount that I went for. However, after flying the model, I discovered that it's quite flimsy and flexible, which does cause a little bit of jello in sunny conditions, and as you will see from the flight footage later, the camera gets knocked a couple of times by the wind, even when Hypersmooth is turned on. So I'd print one of the more robust mounts off Thingiverse for the Bumblebee, because the fitment is the same, or I'd get a Hero 8 and a Hero 8 mount, because I didn't have any issues with that on the Bumblebee. So where has the cost been cut? Well, it's not the motors, because they are the Zing 1408 3600 kV motors, which have a slightly taller but narrower stator than the Bumblebee, but when you price them up, they cost about the same. And the props are the same HSRK 3045s with the props out configuration, so the only changes they have made to bring the price down is the stack and the camera. I should mention that this is the 4S version, and just like the Bumblebee, you can get a 6S version with lower kV motors. Personally, I'd always go for the 6S version with these CineWhoops and then run a 1300 mAh 4S on them, because they don't need a huge amount of power to do their job. And as you will hear on the line of sight flight, the 4S version is very noisy. This time, the 4-in-1 ESC board is rated to 35 amps instead of 40 amps per ESC, which is fine because these tend to only draw around 75 amps in total on a punch-out. There is a built-in current meter, however it was slightly out when it came to the calibration. The biggest difference is that these are BL Heli S ESCs and not 32-bit, but despite that they have still set up JESC, and I was getting a 4-minute flight time with the 1300 mAh 4S LiPo. I can just about see a low ESR capacitor attached to the battery terminal as well. The flight controller is an F4 with an identical setup to the Bumblebee, flashed with Betaflight version 4.1.1. I had to change a couple of things like add air mode, and it only had angle modes set up, so I added acro mode as well as a lost model alarm. The VTX table is only set up for 200 milliwatts, but the spec sheet says that it can do 500 milliwatts, so you will have to edit that in Betaflight to get the correct power output. This is the FrSky XM Plus Bind and Fly version, which did come with the RSSI firmware flash to it, but you can get it with a few different receivers, so you'll have to check the link in the video description to see if yours is listed. It comes with a 90-degree USB adapter, and I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but be really careful with these because they act like a lever, so the smallest knock can lift the solder pads off the USB port, and then you will be stuck in terms of setup. It came with its own PIDs, and I think it actually flew a little bit better than the Bumblebee when it came to acro. Now these guys aren't really designed for acro, but I like to push them to the limit to make sure that they don't do any strange maneuvers on their own, and I'm glad to say that the Green Hornet doesn't. And as I mentioned, the VTX is power switchable up to 500 milliwatts via the tramp protocol, which is the same as the Bumblebee. So for me, there's actually only one benefit in having the Bumblebee over the Green Hornet, and that's the camera, which on the Green Hornet is the Cadex EOS 2 NTSC version with a 16:9 aspect ratio. And that's important because if your goggles are stuck in a 4:3 aspect ratio, then the image will appear stretched vertically, and I find that really difficult to fly with. Luckily, the new Fat Shark HDO2s allow you to switch into a 16:9 aspect ratio, but if you can't do that, then I wouldn't recommend getting this model unless you're prepared to switch the camera out, because you can't change the Cadex EOS 2 into a 4:3 aspect ratio. That being said, the Bumblebee has the Cadex Ratal, which is a great camera, but with all things taken into consideration, it's really the only component that I would consider to be better, and it's not a $100 upgrade. The model's dry weight is 282 grams, making it 8 grams lighter than the Bumblebee, and it's 446 grams with a 1300 mAh 4S LiPo, and it has an all-up weight of 565 grams when you include a GoPro Hero 7. Left in the box is a spare battery strap and mat, along with some copper shielding tape, which on the Bumblebee I thought was for shielding some video noise I was getting. However, this one doesn't have any video noise at all, so it's better than the Bumblebee in that respect. Then you are given a spare set of screws and a spare set of props, but there is no manual, so you'll need to be accustomed to Betaflight to get it in the air. Now, I did the flights with this guy about 3 weeks ago before the lockdown, so I'll show you a line of sight flight and then an FPV flight. And if you are in the market for one of these and then can't decide between the Bumblebee and this one, then I think it's a no-brainer, because there isn't $100 worth of beneficial stuff on the Bumblebee. And I think in terms of price, the Green Hornet is the best performing budget one of these CineWhoops that I've flown to date. So it's the one that I would recommend. Okay, let's go for a line of sight flight with this guy. Wow, it's so noisy already. I think I would definitely go with the 6S version and put a 4S LiPo on there. That is very noisy indeed. Okay, so this is a 1300 mAh 4S. These things aren't made for power, but just out of interest, let's check out the punch. Hearing a little bit of a dip in the RPMs, which isn't surprising with the high KV of this thing. And then also the weight. Let's go into acro mode. So it does acro. That's not what these guys are meant for. Be interesting to see how it stacks up though when it comes to FPV and acro compared to the more expensive Bumblebee. But man, these things are so loud.